The year was 1983. I purchased my first computer. It was an IBM Clone. There were two 5¼ inch floppy disk drives, 640 kilobytes of RAM, and an amber monochrome monitor. The machine ran at 8 megahertz. I was pleased as punch. My computer served mainly as a word processor. I was in college and had many papers to write. For that reason alone, my computer quickly became indispensable. Probably not many of you can remember the intricacies of typing a paper on a typewriter. Even though my computer was mostly a glorified typewriter, it was still a computer. I had grown up reading science fiction and had romantic notions of all that a computer could and would be able to do. Eventually. In the meantime, I booted from a DOS floppy, loaded up WordPerfect from another floppy, and finally saved to a third floppy disk. I didn't mind this process at all. It's just the way computers worked at the time. Still, like any human being who has a computer, I wanted to use it to play. One day at the university bookstore, I came across a computer game. The advertisement said something about thrilling adventure. It came on one floppy disk and was cheap. I bought it and ran home. I booted from my DOS disk and then, with shaky hands, put in the game disk. Now, I knew I only had 640 kilobytes of RAM and a monochrome monitor. I had no right to expect much. Still, I was naively hoping for something wonderful to happen. This is all I got. What? No pixelized monster face? Nothing moving across the screen? No beeps or boops? I had heard tell of such games. I was supposed to type in a command or something like, look around. If I typed in something acceptable, more information would be typed out on the screen. I tried a couple of commands, but got nowhere. The truth is, I was too disappointed to try very hard. That was the end of gaming on my computer for some time. It's rather ironic that nearly 40 years later, after playing games with amazing graphics, I run across a new text-based game and have a blast playing it. Like the Netflix series Stranger Things, Untold Stories is a clever nod to the 80s. I have to admit that when I first realized that Untold Stories was text-based, I wasn't pleased. This was more due to my fear of not being able to figure out how to play the game than it was that I thought it would be boring. I quickly learned I could figure it out, and that boring it wasn't. Untold Stories is text-based, but they use graphics in a clever way. The character I'm playing starts out in an empty vacation home that his family has used over the years. I'm back by myself for a visit. My dad has found my old computer in the attic and put it in my room. I sit down at the keyboard and plug in the game tape. My lamp pushes back the darkness. The pixelized graphics appear on the old TV. I'm starting to think this game may be okay when it gets even better. The graphics are used minimally, skillfully enough to enhance the text. But it is the text, silent and formless, that really controls the mood. The game is played in 4 chapters. I thought at first they would be 4 different stories. In a way they are, but eventually you start to see a connection. The first chapter, or as it is called in the game, the first session, is purely text-based. Text is still a big player in the following sessions, but interspersed with text-based commands, you are listening to voice commands, hearing bits of intriguing storylines, and even moving around in the usual WASD manner. It's a nice mashup of audio and video without ever getting far from the text-based foundation. The final session, like the first, moves back to mainly text on a TV screen. As I start to see the tragedy in the story, I desperately try to rewrite it with my typed commands. It's kind of like when hearing a ghost story around a campfire and you, terrified, yell at the storyteller, "Don't leave the tent!" But the storyteller grins and leaves the tent anyway. I wasn't allowed to make what was happening not happen. The happenings in the 4 sessions start to come clear. I finally understand, and it makes me sad. In a good way. In my estimation, the game is a successful psychological thriller. The puzzles were engaging and challenging for me. I felt validated as I struggled and then solved the problems. I admit to looking for help twice, but both times I rolled my eyes when I found the solution. I could have figured it out. Untold stories get kudos for recreating an 80s game style in a 21st century fashion. The gameplay is fun, the puzzles challenging but solvable, and most important to me, the story is engrossing.
Can't let go.